Okay, so hey everybody, it's Vaughn Scow here again, and today we're talking primarily about this speaker, but with a little bit of a twist. This speaker, this is the G10 Alnico, the G10A. This is the speaker that brought me to WGS. It was, I guess, several summer NAMM shows ago in Nashville. The NAMM show, by the way, is a trade show where manufacturers show off their wares, and I was drawn to the WGS booth. Every product they had looked really awesome to me, but the product that just blew my mind was this. It's a 10-inch speaker with a traditional seamed cone and one mother of a chunk of Alnico magnet on it. They had a little booth there. I went in the booth. I heard the thing, and it blew my mind. I had waited my entire life for a 10-inch speaker that had what this speaker had. So I instantly said, I'll take two. And they said, well, we're sorry, but actually this is just a prototype. We won't be rolling them off the assembly line for, probably another 2 to 6 weeks. And I basically said, well, then I want the first two that come off. And they came and absolutely revolutionized what I thought a 10-inch speaker could do. Over here on my left side, you'll see this little Champ 2. This is my left, your right. The little Champ 2 is a 2.6V6 amp rated about 20 watts or so. It's Rivera's first model with Fender, and it's a very cool sounding little amp. It's a little secret weapon. It sounds teeny tiny. It says Champ on it. You bring it to a gig or to a rehearsal, and everybody laughs at you until they hear it, and then they go, hey, what the heck is that? But the speaker that Fender put in the Champ 2, as is often the case with Fender, especially during the 70s and 80s, is a little on the lame side. I put one of these in it, and it absolutely turned that amp into an amp that was, 90% there into an amp that was 110% there. Blew my mind. Over here on my right, your left, is the Pignose G40V. If you do a little research on these amps, you will find that this is designed by Dennis Krager, and it is, in fact, an honest-to-goodness 2.6L6 40-watt tube amp with a real high-gain front end on it and a master volume. And it's in this cheesy little particle board cabinet with a single 10-inch speaker. Now, it's designed, Kruger designed the amp, and it's a awesome design, but the amp itself was made in China using, very low-level Chinese construction techniques, and one of the things that they really, really, really skimped on with these little pig noses is, in fact, the speaker in it, okay? Stock, these pig noses sound pretty darn terrible. You'll see a lot of pro and semi-pro players, however, who are playing through them. They've probably done two things to the amp. They've went inside and replaced input and output transformers, because those tend to blow on the pig noses pretty quick, and they don't sound that good. Mercury Magnetics can make replacements that'll physically fit in there and sound awesome. And the most important thing that everybody who owns one of these G40Vs and likes it will have done to it is they will have replaced the speaker. Now, I've tried probably 20 different speakers in this amp, all of which sounded better than the stock speaker, which really, really, really sucked. Oh, by the way, I'm selling my stock speaker. Having said all that about it, you want to buy it? But it wasn't until I put one of these G10s from WGS in it that I just said, okay, I'm done. End of story. It's ready to rock. Okay, so that's the history lesson, right? That's my history with the WGS G10s, and I own both the Alnico and the ceramic versions of this speaker. And for the record, I can tell you out there that the ceramic version of this speaker gives you about 90 to 95% of what the Alnico version does for a lot less money. So if you look at the price point on the Alnico speaker and you say, man, I can't afford that, don't feel bad about going for the ceramic because they are pretty darn close as well. Okay, now, actually by pretty darn close, what I mean is the G10C will still be the best 10-inch speaker you have ever even in your wildest dreams conceived. The G10A will be even better yet. Here's the cool thing. Okay, back to a little bit of history lesson here, if you don't mind. I taught college for 10 years, taught audio, and before that I was on the radio, so man, I love to talk. I apologize. Right here is the amp that is closest to my heart. It's not really what I would call my favorite sounding amp, but it's closest to my heart because this old girl came to me way back when I was a teenager from a junk shop in Okoboji, Iowa, and I paid $5 for it. Are you ready to see what it is? Okay, so this is a Fender Pro. And inside, Sanchez, the gal who built all of Leo's amps, and Leo himself, I guess, got involved a little bit, has personally signed and dated it. And this is from December of 1949. So it may have been considered a 49 model, probably though it was considered a 50 model. It probably came out in 1950. And when I bought it, it had been tormented and tortured and terrorized, and it was actually covered in the most ugly, hideous, blue-ribbed naga hide you have ever seen in your life, right? Greg Hopkins at Vintage Amp Restoration in St. Louis is the one who's responsible for the beautiful restoration that you see on this. Okay, now the reason I bring this amp up is because in the, we're finally getting to the point. Can you imagine that? Okay, in the late 1940s, actually even in the early 40s, and in the first few years of the 50s, you didn't see speakers like this that have these ribs in them. The speakers were smooth cone, as we call them today. Back then they just called them speakers. And it was only a little bit later in the mid to late 50s that some manufacturers started putting the ribs or the ridges on the cones in an attempt to sort of stiffen the cones and make them capable of handling a little bit more power. This Fender came out with a Jensen P15 in it and what the enthusiasts like to call a smoothie. It was a smooth cone Jensen P15. And I can tell you that it was also blown. Those smooth cone Jensens, generally speaking, were about 15 watts rated on a good day. So, you know, this amp that's rated at 20 to 25 watts obviously was a little more than that speaker was ever capable of handling. And I'm sure about the very first time somebody kicked in some type of a distortion pedal or a boost pedal on it, that old Jensen probably just kind of said, and then it didn't say anything else. So I've actually reconed the original speaker in that, and that's what's in it right now, but you got to be really careful with it. Now, here's the point. A lot of purists love the old smooth cone speakers, right? Because that was the sound of the late 40s, early 50s, right? That was the sound of these first tweed Fenders. These are called TV front Fenders. But we don't get to hear smooth cones very much anymore. And the reason is all those old smoothies from the 40s and the early 50s are, generally speaking, are blown. And I'm going to tell you, when I recone this speaker, it's coned with a ribbed cone. The reason why is because I couldn't find anyone who had a smooth paper cone to recone it with. So it's actually been reconed with a ribbed paper cone, and it actually is capable of handling a little bit more power than it originally did when it left the factory, too. Okay, here's where it gets cool, though. WGS is now making smooth cone speakers. Yep, I can say it officially. Wow, I know, you listened, 5 minutes to get to that. I want to show you something that if you are really a tone fanatic, and a speaker fanatic in particular, this is going to give you a wet dream tonight. Okay, first of all, yes, it is that same monster bunch of Alnico that the G10 Alnico has always had. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is also rated at 75 watts. This particular one is the coolest orange you will ever see in your stinking life. And, are you ready? Okay. Check this cone out. Yes, this is a smooth cone. Has a little accordion surround. The entire cone is smooth. And do not adjust your sets. Indeed, the cone does have a slight purple hue to it. This is one gorgeous stinking speaker for real. Okay, well, I tell you what. What we're going to do now is compare the WGS Smoothie 10, if you will, to the WGS Ribbed Alnico 10. And oh, by the way, you've probably seen on all the forums where if you just Google, smooth cone speaker, you'll find a lot of forums where somebody will say something to the extent of, "Hey, what's the difference between a smooth cone and a rib cone speaker?" And for the record, the number one answer, ladies and gentlemen, is ribs are specifically designed for her pleasure. Okay. So now you know that. Okay, when we come back, we're going to do a little listening comparison, so please come back and listen to part 2 in this as I hit the magic remote control.